Imagine this. You wake up beside someone you once swore you couldn't live without. Their face is familiar, their voice once felt like home, but now, when they speak, it lands like shards of glass beneath your skin. Their smile is no longer comforting, it is calculated. The warmth you once felt has grown cold, but you keep reaching for it anyway, as if somewhere in the past the embers might still be alive. Why? Why does the human heart cling to the very thing that bruises it? Why does the mind, so evolved, so rational, build prisons of attachment and call them love? Here lies the paradox. The ones who hurt us the deepest are often the very ones we defend, protect, and chase. The toxic relationship is not only about betrayal or cruelty, it is about the unholy marriage between longing and destruction. A dance where tenderness disguises control, where affection is rationed like a scarce commodity, and where silence cuts deeper than words ever could. You know the pattern. The apology that feels sincere until it's not. The brief moments of sweetness that convince you to stay, even as the storm brews again. The cycle: tension, explosion, regret, reconciliation. Each repetition leaving you more entangled, more unsure of where love ends and manipulation begins. But pause. Isn't this the strangest of human contradictions? If fire burns, we withdraw our hand. If poison is poured into a glass, we do not drink. Yet when love grows toxic, when the very air in the room begins to suffocate, we remain, we endure. Sometimes we even defend the source of our suffering. Is it weakness? Is it devotion? Or is it something far more unsettling, that we cannot always tell the difference between nourishment and poison when both are served in the same vessel? Imagine a person drowning. They thrash, they panic, and suddenly they clutch at whatever floats past: branches, wreckage, even serpents, anything that promises relief. But what if the very thing you clutch is dragging you deeper? What if salvation wears the disguise of destruction? You have seen it, perhaps in your own life, perhaps in the stories whispered by friends, perhaps in the lives of strangers who walk past you in silence. Behind closed doors, what looks like love can be war. A war where the battlefield is not the earth beneath your feet, but the fragile corridors of your mind. And yet, here is the unbearable truth. Sometimes the most intoxicating bonds are forged not from health, but from pain. We confuse chaos with passion. We mistake jealousy for devotion. We reinterpret control as care. Like moths to a flame, we are drawn to the very glow that ensures our destruction. Have you asked yourself why? Why your memory clings not to the long nights of silence, but to the brief, rare tenderness? Why the insults echo in your bones, yet you hunger still for the smallest crumb of affection? Why, even when every rational voice screams to walk away, you stay? Could it be that we are not merely victims of someone else's cruelty, but prisoners of our own psychology? Could it be that the cage is not only built by them, but also reinforced by us? You see, the toxic relationship is not only an external prison, it is an inner labyrinth, each corridor lined with mirrors that distort reality until you no longer know if you are the monster or the prey. The greatest cruelty is not that another wounds you, it is that over time you begin to wound yourself. You justify their actions, you silence your doubts, you shrink your own voice until it disappears, and still you call it love. But here is the haunting question, the one that presses like a weight upon the chest. What if we are addicted not to the person, but to the cycle itself? The highs and lows, the euphoria followed by despair, the endless waiting for a love that never arrives. What if that rhythm itself becomes the drug? Then the paradox becomes unbearable. The very thing that destroys you is the thing you crave most. And so you linger, not because you are blind, but because something inside you insists on staying. Something that whispers, maybe next time, maybe tomorrow, maybe they will change. But what if they never do? What if the real question is not whether they will change, but whether you will wake up from the dream you have woven? And deeper still, what if the true toxicity is not only in them, but in the part of you that keeps hoping against all reason, all evidence, all pain, that somehow this love will heal instead of harm? That is the paradox. That is the great question. And until you confront it, you will never see the hidden roots beneath this garden of thorns.
Beneath the surface of every toxic relationship lies a hidden structure, not just of manipulation and cruelty, but of deep psychological forces and philosophical contradictions that bind us tighter than chains. To understand why people remain in such relationships, you must go beyond the visible bruises and spoken lies. You must step into the shadowed architecture of the human mind. Carl Jung once wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." This is the heart of the problem. Toxic love is not merely endured, it is chosen, not consciously, but through the gravitational pull of unconscious forces. You think you are loving freely, yet you are enacting a pattern scripted long before you had words to describe it. Imagine your childhood. The first figures of love you knew, parents, caretakers, family, became the template for all future attachments. If affection was conditional, if warmth was unpredictable, if love was tangled with fear, then your nervous system learned a dangerous lesson. Love is not steady, it is earned. Affection must be chased, struggled for, endured through pain. This is not knowledge written in books, it is etched into the body itself, in the nervous system's rhythms, in the heart's desperate beat. This is why years later you may find yourself drawn to partners who mirror those old unresolved dynamics. You don't consciously choose them, your psyche does. The familiar is seductive, even when it is corrosive. As Freud observed, we are never so defenseless against suffering as when we love. But here's the darker truth. The psyche does not distinguish between the familiar and the healthy. It seeks repetition, not resolution. This is the cruel echo of what psychologists call repetition compulsion, the unconscious drive to recreate unresolved wounds, as if replaying them might finally allow for healing. Yet instead of healing, the wound deepens. You are drawn again and again to the very dynamic that undoes you. Nietzsche, who spoke often of the eternal recurrence, would see in this cycle not just pathology, but philosophy. He would ask, if you were to live this same pattern over and over, eternally, would you call it love or torment? Would you bless the cycle or curse it? And if you would curse it, why do you remain within it in this life at all? The answer lies in another hidden dimension: identity. Toxic love does not only bruise the heart, it shapes the self. You begin to define yourself not as an autonomous being, but as a mirror to the other. Sartre spoke of the look, the way another's gaze can trap you, reduce you to an object in their reality. In a toxic relationship, you become ensnared in this gaze. Your worth is measured not by your own being, but by their fleeting approval. You do not ask, "Who am I?" Instead, you ask, "Who am I to them?" This is why their silence cuts so deeply, why their affection feels like air itself. Because your very sense of existence begins to hinge on their recognition. Without it, you feel invisible, unreal, and so you cling, not out of love, but out of existential necessity. But what of the philosophical root? Why does the human spirit tolerate such diminishment? Schopenhauer, ever the pessimist, might answer, because life itself is suffering, and love merely amplifies this truth. To him, relationships are not bonds of liberation, but manifestations of the blind, irrational will to life, a force that uses individuals as pawns for its own continuation. From this lens, toxic love is not an aberration, but the natural state of human entanglement. Desire enslaves, suffering follows. Yet Viktor Frankl would protest. He would insist that meaning can be found even in suffering, that within the toxic entrapment lies the possibility of transcendence. But for transcendence to occur, one must first see the suffering for what it is, not disguise it as devotion. The problem is that many never reach that clarity. They interpret their endurance as loyalty, their pain as sacrifice, their despair as proof of love. And here Aldous Huxley's warning echoes, that human beings are infinitely malleable, capable of adapting even to cages, so long as the bars are gilded with the illusion of purpose. We tell ourselves stories. I stay because I love them. I stay because they need me. I stay because leaving would mean I failed. These are not truths. They are narcotics, self-administered to numb the unbearable realization that you are trapped. But perhaps the most unsettling truth is this. The toxic relationship thrives not merely because of the abuser's cruelty, but because of the victim's collusion with their own wounds. This is not to blame, but to reveal. The roots of tolerance grow deep in the soil of one's psyche. The fear of abandonment, the hunger for validation, the inability to sit with solitude, these are not weaknesses of character, but echoes of ancient wounds. So ask yourself, when you look at the one who harms you, are you truly looking at them, or are you gazing into the ghost of your own past? Are you seeking their love, or are you still searching for the love that was once denied? The hidden problem, then, is not simply that people enter toxic relationships. It is that they confuse toxicity with destiny, pain with passion, familiarity with love. They cannot see the distinction, because the distinction was long before they had the power to choose. And so the cycle continues. But every cycle, no matter how eternal it seems, carries within it a breaking point, a moment when the illusions fracture and the hidden roots are exposed. The question is, will you recognize that moment, or will you turn away?
The poison of a toxic relationship does not remain confined to the intimacy between two people. It seeps outward, silently infiltrating the psyche, the body, and even the fabric of society. What looks like a private matter between lovers is in fact a contagion, a slow erosion that reshapes how you see yourself, how you see the world, and how you dare to love again. You might think you can compartmentalize it, that the shouting, the manipulation, the subtle humiliations stay within the walls of your home, your texts, your shared moments. But trauma does not obey boundaries. It rewires the nervous system, reprograms the brain, and installs fear where freedom once lived. Imagine this. You are walking down the street. The sun is warm, the world ordinary. Yet the smallest vibration of your phone sends a jolt of anxiety down your spine.
A text that should mean nothing feels like a summons. A pause in a conversation feels like rejection. A delay in a response spirals into dread. This is the unseen consequence. Your nervous system has been conditioned to anticipate threat, even in silence. Neuroscience calls this hypervigilance, the brain's alarm system stuck in the on position. In toxic love, unpredictability is the weapon. Sometimes they smile, sometimes they strike, sometimes they disappear, sometimes they cling. The inconsistency becomes the drug. Your dopamine pathways fire not at the certainty of love, but at its unpredictability. The reward is erratic, and so you chase it more fiercely. This is the same mechanism that hooks gamblers to slot machines, not the win, but the maybe. The consequence? Your very biology conspires against you. What should repel you, instead binds you. The body learns to crave the very pain that wounds it. And when this conditioning is left unchallenged, it lingers long after the relationship ends. You carry it into the next bond, the next friendship, even into how you speak to yourself in the silence of your own mind. Cognitive biases tighten the trap. Take the sunk cost fallacy, the belief that because you have invested so much time, effort, and emotion, you must continue, lest it all be wasted. Or confirmation bias, the way you cling to every small sign of hope while disregarding the overwhelming evidence of harm. Or learned helplessness, that devastating state when repeated disappointments convince you there is no escape, so you stop trying altogether. The unseen consequence is not only that you suffer, it is that you begin to normalize suffering. What once shocked you now feels inevitable. What once hurt now feels familiar. And the familiar feels safe, even when it is killing you. But the shadow stretches even further. Society itself becomes complicit. Think of the cultural narratives that glorify suffering and love. Films, novels, songs that equate jealousy with passion, endurance with loyalty, sacrifice with proof of devotion. These myths seep into the collective unconscious, teaching generations to confuse control with care. You begin to believe that pain is the price of intimacy, that suffering is noble, that devotion means swallowing silence. And what happens to a society built on such myths? It raises individuals who accept toxicity not just in relationships, but in workplaces, politics, communities. The same dynamics repeat. Control disguised as protection, exploitation disguised as opportunity, silencing disguised as order. The personal becomes political, and the political mirrors the personal. But there is a consequence even more insidious: the erosion of identity. In toxic love, your self begins to dissolve. You become a curator of moods, a strategist of survival. Every word you speak is measured. Will this anger them? Will this please them? Soon your authentic voice is silenced. You no longer know what you want, only what will keep the peace. You shrink, bend, mold yourself into whatever shape avoids conflict. And the tragedy is this: you forget who you are. Not metaphorically, literally. Neurologically, the self is built from repeated choices, expressions, and affirmations of identity. But in toxicity, those choices are stolen, your expression suppressed, your affirmation replaced by theirs. Over time, the you that once laughed freely, dreamed boldly, lived authentically, becomes a ghost. What remains is not a partner, but a shadow, a being that survives rather than lives. And survival, when stretched too long, feels like existence, but is not life at all. Perhaps the greatest unseen consequence is what you carry forward, the inheritance of silence. Children who watch such dynamics absorb them as normal. Friends who see you endure begin to wonder if they should too. Generations replicate what is not exposed. What is personal pain becomes cultural inheritance. And so the trap does not end with you. Unless broken, it continues, like an echo that does not fade but multiplies. But pause. The most haunting realization is not that toxicity destroys you. It is that it deceives you into believing that nothing else exists, that healthy love is a myth, that freedom is an illusion, that you deserve no better. This is the cage within the cage, not only being trapped, but forgetting that outside the bars is a world you cannot yet see. And so the unseen consequence is this: you lose your imagination, the ability to dream of a love that does not wound, the capacity to believe in a self unshackled, the vision to see beyond the labyrinth. Without imagination, there can be no rebellion, no change, no escape. But once the unseen is seen, the illusion fractures. Awareness itself is a blade, and with it, the possibility of rebellion is born. The question is, do you dare to wield it?
Rebellion rarely begins with fireworks. It begins with a whisper. A quiet refusal inside you that says, "No more." That whisper is fragile at first, drowned by years of excuses and rationalizations. But once it is heard, it cannot be unheard. That whisper is the beginning of liberation. To break free from toxicity, you must first confront an unsettling truth. Freedom feels like loss before it feels like liberation. Why? Because the toxic bond does not only entrap you, it defines you. It has woven itself into your identity, your routines, your sense of worth. To sever it feels like cutting away part of your own flesh. But paradoxically, that pain is proof you are reclaiming yourself. Imagine standing at the edge of a cliff. Behind you, a prison of familiar walls. Before you, a vast unknown. Every instinct urges you to turn back because at least the prison is familiar. But freedom demands that terrifying leap into the unknown. It is not comfort, it is risk. And yet only by stepping into uncertainty can you escape the certainty of continued suffering. Breaking free requires dismantling illusions. The illusion that your endurance will change them. The illusion that suffering is proof of love. The illusion that you are incomplete without them. Each illusion is a chain. The rebellion begins the moment you call them what they are: lies. Nietzsche once wrote, "The secret of reaping the greatest fruitfulness and the greatest enjoyment from life is to live dangerously." To live dangerously in this context is to risk being alone, to risk the collapse of your old identity, to risk the pain of withdrawal. Because yes, breaking free feels like withdrawal. Toxic love is an addiction, and leaving it produces cravings, relapses, despair. But every addiction broken leads to a self reclaimed. Here lies a counterintuitive truth. Breaking free is less about rejecting the other and more about reconstructing yourself. You do not escape by changing their behavior. You escape by reclaiming your own. Toxicity thrives on your silence, your compliance, your self-erasure. Rebellion begins the moment you speak, the moment you act, the moment you choose not to shrink, but to stand. But rebellion is not only personal, it is ancestral, cultural, collective. Every time one person refuses toxicity, they weaken the myths that sustain it. Every departure is a crack in the story that says endurance equals devotion. Every act of liberation is a signal to others: you do not have to stay.
History is filled with such rebellions. Think of women who left marriages in eras when doing so meant exile. Think of enslaved people who risked everything for freedom, even when survival seemed impossible. Think of dissidents who spoke truth against oppressive regimes, knowing it could cost their lives. Their courage reveals a profound truth. Liberation always begins with one person daring to imagine life outside the cage. But how, practically, does one break free? First, by reclaiming perception. Begin to name the reality you have been denying. Write it, speak it, confess it, even if only to yourself at first. Naming truth is the first act of rebellion. Second, by embracing solitude. The toxic bond convinces you that aloneness is unbearable, but solitude is not emptiness. It is the soil of rebirth. Only in the silence of being alone can you begin to hear your own voice again. Third, by re-educating desire. Your nervous system has been conditioned to crave chaos. Rebellion means rewiring, seeking out relationships, friendships, experiences that are steady, gentle, respectful. At first, it will feel dull, even lifeless. That is not because it lacks love, but because your body has mistaken adrenaline for passion. With time, gentleness will begin to feel like home again. Fourth, by building witness. Rebellion thrives in community. Share your truth with those who will not silence you. Friends, therapists, spiritual guides, even strangers who have walked the same path. Each witness strengthens your courage, reminding you that your story is not madness, but survival. And finally, by forgiving yourself. The greatest weapon toxicity wields is shame. The voice that says, you should have left sooner. You should have been stronger. You should have known better. Rebellion silences this voice with truth. You endured because you were human. You leave because now you are awake. The rebellion is not only about leaving a person, it is about leaving behind an identity built on diminishment. It is the slow, fierce process of remembering who you are when no one is controlling the narrative. It is the reconstruction of the self, brick by brick, breath by breath. And make no mistake, rebellion will hurt. There will be nights of doubt, mornings of grief, afternoons of longing. But these are not signs of failure. They are signs of healing. Pain is the echo of chains breaking. One day, you will wake up and the silence will no longer feel like loss, but peace. The phone will vibrate and your heart will not race. The mirror will reflect not a ghost, but a self returning. That is rebellion. Not loud, not always dramatic, but steady, relentless, transformative. And yet rebellion is not the end. It is only the threshold. Beyond it lies something greater, a final truth, one so profound it reshapes not only how you see love, but how you see yourself, suffering, and existence itself. The question is, are you ready to hear it?
Imagine standing before a mirror that does not reflect your face, but your soul. You gaze into it, and what stares back is not the bruised figure who once begged for scraps of love, nor the shadow that shrank in someone else's presence. What you see is something older, something primal, your essence before it was caged, before it was shaped by wounds, before it was chained to cycles of suffering. This is the ultimate truth. Toxic relationships are not about them, they are about you. Not in the sense of blame, but in the sense of awakening. The relationship was never merely a prison, it was a mirror a mirror reflecting your unhealed wounds, your unconscious patterns, your deepest fears. You did not stay because you were weak. You stayed because some part of you was searching for recognition, for completion, for the love you had long been denied. But here is the revelation. No one else can complete you. No one else can heal the wound. No one else can grant you the freedom you already possess. The love you sought in another has always been the love you withheld from yourself. Think of it. Every time you begged for validation, what you were really yearning for was your own acceptance. Every time you endured cruelty, hoping it might one day soften, what you truly craved was your own gentleness. Every time you feared abandonment, what you longed for was your own unwavering presence. The paradox is breathtaking. You searched outward for what could only ever be found inward. Sartre spoke of radical freedom, that terrifying realization that no one defines you but yourself. And this is the final liberation. You are not the sum of what was done to you. You are not the echo of their voice, nor the shadow of their gaze. You are freedom itself, disguised in the frailty of flesh and memory. But freedom is unbearable for many because it strips away excuses. Once you see that the prison bars were never locked, you can no longer blame the jailer. You must confront the truth that it is you who chooses whether to walk out. This is why so many remain trapped, not because escape is impossible, but because freedom demands responsibility. Nietzsche warned that most people prefer the comfort of chains to the weight of freedom. Yet he also declared, "Become who you are." To become who you are requires walking through fire, the fire of solitude, the fire of self-confrontation, the fire of reclaiming your own authority. And when you emerge, you discover something staggering. The person you thought you lost to toxicity never truly disappeared. They were waiting, patiently, silently, beneath the rubble. The laughter, the courage, the dreams, they are not gone. They are buried and they are yours to unearth. But the ultimate truth cuts even deeper. Toxic relationships are not aberrations in life, they are initiations. Pain is a teacher that polite comfort cannot be. The betrayal, the manipulation, the diminishment, all of it is a curriculum written in the ink of suffering. Its lesson? To force you to awaken, to push you to the edge where you finally see that the source of love, meaning, and identity is not external but internal. Viktor Frankl, surviving the unspeakable horrors of the camps, wrote that everything can be taken from a person except one thing, the freedom to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances. Apply this to love, and the revelation is clear. They may harm you, abandon you, diminish you, but they cannot define you unless you allow it. So what then is the final, most powerful realization? It is this. The only truly toxic relationship is the one you have with yourself. All others are but reflections of that inner war. If you love yourself fiercely, you will not tolerate diminishment. If you honor your own worth, you will not chase those who discard it. If you see your own light, you will not seek illumination from another's flame. The battle was never between you and them. It was always between you and the part of yourself that forgot your worth. The rebellion was not against their cruelty, but against your own silence. The prison was not their presence, but your refusal to walk away. And when you see this, everything changes. Not only do you free yourself from them, you free yourself from the illusion that anyone else holds the key to your existence. Imagine waking tomorrow with this truth burning in you, that you are not broken, not unworthy, not incomplete, that your scars are not evidence of failure, but proof of survival, that love is not something to be begged for, but something to be embodied, that your task is not to find someone to rescue you, but to rescue yourself. And when you do, love ceases to be a battlefield. It becomes a meeting of equals, a communion of two sovereign beings who choose freely to walk together. No chains, no cages, no diminishing, just the quiet, steady recognition, I am whole, and so are you. This is the final paradox, the final liberation.
You only discover true love the moment you realize you do not need it to survive. And so, as the dust settles, you are left with a haunting but liberating question. Will you keep searching for yourself in others, or will you finally find yourself within? Because once you do, you will never again mistake poison for nourishment, chains for devotion, or control for love. You will not only have escaped the toxic relationship, you will have transcended it. And that is the ultimate truth.